welcome to today's On This Day in Tudor History. I'm Claire Ridgway. I'm the author of a book called On This Day in Tudor History, which has served as inspiration for these daily videos, which I'm bringing to you every day of 2019. Now, today I'm taking you back to the reign of King Henry VIII, and I'm actually going to remain there for a few days actually, for it was on this day in Tudor history, the 29th of May 1533, that the celebrations for the coronation of Henry VIII's second wife, Queen Anne Boleyn, kicked off with a spectacular river pageant along the River Thames in London, and was due to be crowned on the 1st of June at Westminster Abbey. And these celebrations, her coronation, are very important because Henry was actually treating her as if she was a reigning monarch by having all of these processions and celebrations for her. He was really making a statement. Now, the procession of barges that day began at Billingsgate, and the Queen was picked up at Greenwich and escorted along the river in this procession to the Tower of London, where she would stay before her coronation procession on the 31st of May. The Tower of London, of course, was not just prison, it was a royal palace, a sumptuous royal palace, and the royal palace and royal apartments had been renovated especially for Queen Anne's coronation. Now, this pageant must have been an absolutely wonderful sight because it comprised over 300 barges. It had a fire-breathing dragon, it had monsters and wild men, and also a representation of Anne's falcon badge. So I'm going to give you just a few details of the procession so that you can kind of imagine it in your head and what it might have looked like going along the river that day. And this description is based on an article that I wrote for the Anne Boleyn Files a few years ago, which I drew from primary sources, so contemporary descriptions of this procession. Now, this pageant started at 1 p.m. on Thursday the 29th of May, when the London Livery Company's 50 barges set off from Billingsgate. Now, these 60 to 70 foot long barges, they're huge barges, were escorted by small boats which were decorated with banners displaying the arms of the companies, streamers, bunting and cloth of gold. Minstrels entertained the fleet with music, and in front of the Lord Mayor's barge was a foist or wherry, another type of boat, bearing a great dragon which was described as continually moving and casting wildfire. So they actually had a mechanical fire-breathing dragon in one of those boats that day. And this dragon was surrounded by terrible monsters and wild men, also casting fires and making hideous noises. After them came the Mayor of London's barge and the Bachelor's barge, which was full of musicians playing trumpets and other instruments. The Bachelor's barge was hung with cloth of gold and silk and bore two huge banners displaying the arms of both the King, Henry VIII, and Queen Anne, along with streamers and bells. It also bore the arms of the company of haberdashers and merchant adventurers, and on the starboard gunwale were 36 scutcheons or metal shields showing the King's and Queen's arms impaled. The King's colours were on the right and the Queen's colours were on the left. And these shields were fastened to hangings of cloth of gold and silver, so sumptuous decorations on these barges. Now, another feature of this river procession was a wherry carrying Anne's falcon badge. This crowned white falcon stood on a gold tree stump surrounded by white and red roses and apparently virgins singing and playing sweetly. The procession arrived at Greenwich Palace at 3 p.m. to pick up the pregnant Queen and to take her by river to the Tower of London. Anne appeared dressed in cloth of gold, and she boarded the waiting barge. Her ladies boarded a second barge, and the king's guard boarded the king's barge. The king was not part of the procession. The focus was to be entirely on the queen. These 3 barges were joined by the barges of bishops and of courtiers. Noblemen in attendance that day included the Duke of Suffolk, the Marquis of Dorset, the Earls of Arundel, Derby, Rutland, Worcester, Huntingdon, Sussex and Oxford, and Anne's father, Thomas Boleyn, Earl of Wiltshire. By this time, there were what is described as some 120 large craft and 200 small ones on the River Thames. So an incredible amount of barges and boats. Letters and papers describes how gun salutes heralded the Queen as she made her way along the Thames, and that when she came over against Wapping Mills, the Tower loosed their ordnance most triumphantly, shooting 4 guns at once. Anne landed at Tower Wharf, where she was greeted by dignitaries who lined up across the King's Bridge to the Tower's private royal entrance, the court gate of the Byward Tower. Among the dignitaries lined up there were Sir Edward Walsingham, Lieutenant of the Tower, and Sir William Kingston, Constable of the Tower. When Anne entered the Tower, it was there that she saw her husband. She was received by her husband, the King, who is described as having laid his hands on both her sides, kissing her with great reverence and a joyful countenance, before he then led her to her chamber. The King and Queen then supped together. Now, for me, it is sad to think that Anne entered the Tower of London that day in the very same way that she did after her arrest in May 1536, and that she also stayed in the very same royal apartments that would go on to serve as her prison in 1536. Just under 3 years separated these very different events. 1533 being that time of triumph after waiting so long to be queen. She was finally being crowned queen. And of course 1536 being her fall and leading to her execution. So 2 very different years, 3 years separating these 2 very different events, but both involving the Tower of London. Now, I'll be back tomorrow with another On This Day in Tudor History event for you. I do hope you're enjoying these videos. You can subscribe by just clicking around about there. You can, of course, like this video. That would be very much appreciated. And you can hit the bell to be notified of videos as they go live. Have a great day. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.